Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast, where we celebrate individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at Rock Creek Coffee Roasters, home of small batch, freshly roasted coffee. Our guest today is Syren Nagakyrie, outdoor enthusiast, author, blogger, and founder of Disabled Hikers. Disabled Hikers is building a disability community and justice in the outdoors through resources, training, and advocacy. Syren is the author of numerous trail guides and travel itineraries for people with disabilities, and she is the author of The Disabled Hiker's Guide to Western Washington and Oregon. And this book was published this past September 2022 by Falcon Books. Syren, it's a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. Now, for our listeners, I had the chance virtual encounter with Syren because I had read an article that was published by the Audubon Society of Portland, or Ali Berman, and I thought, we had just published our episode with Ian McKay. He is the founder of Ian's Ride. And I thought, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in the Pacific Northwest. And I thought, I'm really excited, Syren, that you agreed to be on the podcast. It's, again, great to have you here. I would love if you could, for our listeners, just kind of introduce yourself, a little bit about your background and where you've been and how you got to this point of being the founder of Disabled Hikers.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm Syren Nagakyrie. I use they, them pronouns, and I am based in Northwest Washington State on the Olympic Peninsula, but I've lived all over the country. I actually grew up in Florida and spent a good portion of my 20s in Western North Carolina, which very much all helped really develop my love of the outdoors and my wanting to experience hiking. But I grew up with multiple disabilities and chronic illnesses, even as a kid. So I really couldn't go out and do a lot of the same activities as my peers. We didn't go camping. We didn't go hiking. We didn't do summer trips, things like that. But I spent a lot of time just hanging out in my yard and watching the birds and the bugs and, watching the moon at night when it was like way too hot and muggy in Florida to be out in the day. And just really, that helped me develop a real appreciation for the nature that surrounded me on a daily basis, even when I was just like sitting in my yard at home. So I feel like that really instilled in me a sense of connection and a sense of belonging that I didn't feel with my peers and with society in general. So I grew older and wanted to experience more of the outdoors. I enrolled in some education programs like earth sciences, and I did an herbal education program and was able to start getting outdoors with other people and really experiencing nature in a different way. And that was, of course, both good and bad. It gave me some really incredible experiences of being in the outdoors, but also it really highlighted even more how little people understood about disability and my needs and what access meant. So yeah, this really was instilled in me from an early age.
Okay. Okay. Now, you mentioned that growing up, you didn't spend a lot of times out of maybe your local environment, getting out into the woods, rivers, trails, things like that. As you grew up, were you in like the public schools? Were you exposed to individuals who maybe had any passions like you now have, and maybe were that little bit of spark? Sometimes we have sparks that we are on the receiving end of, and they don't show up until later in life. It's like this aha moment. Is there anything that really kind of sparked you to go down this path that you're on right now in terms of being an advocate for the disabled and for their access into the outdoor space?
Yeah, not so much as a child, but I would say in my early 20s, I enrolled specifically in an herbal education program and started going out and learning how to be with the land in a slower and more mindful way that really helped me develop a different kind of appreciation, exposed me to a different way of being outdoors. And I learned that there was ways that my body could still be out in nature and have a meaningful experience. So from there, as I continued having these experiences and just meeting other folks who were disabled and wanted to be outdoors but didn't know how, didn't have access to resources, didn't have access to information, that really kind of just started planting those seeds, right? And then sorry, my brain is blinking.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm curious, and in fact, you sparked a reminder for me. Is so I'm a member of the Outdoor Writers Association of America,
Mhm.
which, if you haven't heard of it, you really should, being the writer and the blogger and the author, because the organization is full of them. There's an individual, her name is Bridget Butler, a phenomenal woman. She's out in the Pacific, not the Pacific, the Atlantic, up in the Vermont area.
Mm.
And her program is birding, and she has her interest is in birding, and she has what her program is called slow birding, which is a lot of birders, they want to get out, they've got to run down the trail looking for the birds. And her position was sometimes you just have to sit in the moment and observe the things that are around you. And so when you had said that you included the word slow in this last description, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that now. It's important. And I'm curious or wonder if perhaps with a disability and perhaps being forced or in a position of having to slow down and be present and in the moment, that in itself, I think, is special, because you really begin to see and hear, smell, maybe even taste the things that are around you. And
Mhm.
I think that's pretty phenomenal.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So much of outdoor culture, I feel like, is so focused on like rushing to the next mountain peak and like getting in as many miles as quickly as you can and conquering this trail. And when you do that, you really do miss a lot of the natural environment and that ability to really experience things on a small scale that I feel like is so important if we're really going to help develop more of a stewardship mindset in the outdoors.
Sure. Now, as you were beginning to incorporate all of this interest and passion, insights into being outdoors, is there one particular activity that, and I probably, this is like, Howard, that's a obvious question here, given the name of the website and your background, but I guess I should just ask, was hiking, was that what grabbed your attention first? Were there other activities that you kind of focused on prior to hiking taking such an important part of the work that you're doing today?
Yeah, hiking was definitely the first thing that really grabbed my interest. And I didn't really start hiking again until probably my mid 20s or so, mid to late 20s. I'm 40 now. And, but I always kept encountering all of these obstacles and barriers and a lack of information and lack of people who really understood what I needed. So I had to really spend a lot of time just figuring it out for myself and figure out what it meant for me to be outdoors, how to find the information that I needed, and all of that. And it all just kind of came to a head one day when I was out hiking on a portion of a trail that I was fairly familiar with, but I didn't find any of the information that I needed about things like stairs and rocky drop offs and steep places and things like that. And so I was out on this trail and just getting increasingly frustrated and annoyed and in pain. And finally reached my destination of a bridge over this beautiful waterfall and was standing there just exhausted and in pain and feeling frustrated. And in that moment, just inspiration struck, like the light bulb went off. And I said, why don't I do something about this? Like, enough. And I went home and wrote up a blog post about it and a little trail guide. And that really kind of was the real initial spark that kind of blossomed into the Table Hikers.
Okay. Now, have you always been a blogger or a writer as you were growing up, or did this event and this insight, was that pretty close to when you first started blogging?
No, I've always been a writer and a blogger. I wrote my first like little book when I was, I don't know, 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I always knew I was going to write a book one day. This was not the book that I ever imagined I was going to be writing.
Okay.
It's the book that got written. So yeah.
Okay. Now, as far as education, did your pursuit of education inform a lot of your abilities and interest in what you're doing today? Or at least some of us, I went to school and became a psychology major, and then I ended up in technology for probably about 20 some too many years. And then I decided I like coaching and I like podcasting. But how did your educational pursuit jive with what you're doing today?
Yeah, it didn't much really. I also went to school for psychology for a while. I ended up not being able to complete college because college was also very inaccessible to me for a lot of reasons. But I did, as I mentioned before, enroll in some herbal education programs, and
Okay.
that did help teach me a lot about being in the outdoors and appreciating nature and all of that. But yeah, otherwise, it's very much been a self-teaching process.
Okay. Okay. Are those education programs still around that you had joined?
No, not in the same incarnation. I think the teachers are still teaching, but that school isn't around anymore.
You had described some of this frustration about being out on the trail and perhaps not having the 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 tools or the equipment maybe you needed, or maybe the trail. I mean, for our listeners, and you'll see some of this in our YouTube video. My background is out in the woods, and you'll have seen that when we interviewed Ian. But he's in a wheelchair, he's paraplegic, and there's go down these trails. Access into the trails sometimes blocked by a I don't even know what you call these things. You probably know. There are these metal barriers that
Mhm.
the wheelchair can't even fit through, but once you're on the trail, it's great.
Right.
What what were some of the barriers that you had experienced when you were first out exploring, getting out on the trail? And how has that changed to where we are today, end of 2022, and the promotion of accessibility? What changes have you seen?
Yeah. So for sure, one of the big barriers is just a lack of information. There's really not too many places that provide really detailed trail information about the design of the trail, barriers on the trail, what you'll encounter, accessible features, things like that. So that's kind of the first barrier. And then once I get on the trail, there's always things that aren't mentioned, of course. And then there's like things like barrier, like you mentioned, that would make it accessible, except for that one obstacle. There's like no benches, no restrooms, no water fountains, no things like that. But people think those kind of amenities like diminish your natural experience. But for me, it's crucial to be able to get out on a trail to have those things available or know whether they're available or not. So things like that. And then I definitely think there has been some changes. There's been a lot of people doing this work for a very long time. And just now, I think we're beginning to see some real changes of parks and organizations who are starting to address accessibility and all of what that means and providing some of that more detailed information, and at least starting to think and look at things differently and really expanding the lens of what disability means in the outdoors and who is disabled and what that looks like.
Okay. As a outdoor enthusiast, an individual with a disability or disabilities, you have a go-to list, or like before you head out, here's Siren's top 10 list of what you need to prepare to go out.
Yes. So, my the top one, of course, is research. I do, you know, every trail that I hike requires probably at least 4 to 6 hours of research, trying to figure out what that trail is going to be like and how accessible it is. So once I have nailed that down, more or less, and then I get out on the trail and I'm always carrying water and hiking poles and some kind of like lightweight chair to sit on because again, those things are never available on a trail.
Sure.
And making sure I have a map downloaded for when I get lost or confused, because that also happens often. And yeah, and having information with me and things like that.
Okay.
Making sure I have all my medical supplies and anything I may need.
Okay. It's funny, the little portable chair, I actually have one because, I do a lot of, nighttime, walking, and it's because we're taking our tripod and camera out to dark skies, and it'd be nice to have a chair I can carry around with me, but it's a big chair when I finally get to my destination. But sometimes that little portable chair is, like, perfect. Yeah. To give a shout out to some of the brick and mortar online purveyors, is there a site or two for our listeners if they, again, fall into this, there's a disability they have to navigate around in order for them to enjoy? Are there sites that really you'd recommend for them to go and visit, or to get, besides obviously your website, which we are going to eventually get to, other where they can get the equipment they need, and or feel like they can get the help that they need before they purchase the equipment?
Mhm. Yeah, there's none that really come right to mind, and I automatically
That's
recommend. Yeah.
that's okay. It's funny. I clearly sit at my desk too much. Okay, and whether it's my coaching, my podcasting, and so I finally decided I was going to go out and get a pair of new gym shoes. Now, first I went on Amazon to do my research, but then I discovered near where I live, there's a very well-known running store, which I will never run ever again, unless I'm being chased by a bear, which I'm gonna be dinner anyways. But I really appreciated the help they gave me before I would purchase a shoe. They asked a lot of questions. What am I going to do? And I think having a place where you can go and ask questions. And so I guess the next question would be, are there websites, and perhaps again, that's the disabled hikers website, where an individual can go and ask questions and get advice? Are there those types of resources out there now?
Um, not too many, unfortunately. That's definitely something that we're working on building. We want to launch a disabled hikers network that will be an opportunity for disabled and non-disabled folks to come together and have those
Mhm.
conversations and ask questions and things like that. But currently, really the only thing I can think of is like some Facebook groups.
Okay.
Disabled Hikers has a Facebook group, and that's a good place to ask questions and connect to people.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the website, Disabled Hikers. When did this idea begin to take fruition for you?
Yeah, so it was March of 2018. And again, it should I retell that story about going for the hike or
You do this is your rodeo, so you get to decide what you want to do.
okay. Yay, editing.
I keep all this stuff in, by the way. I don't,
Yeah.
unless there's an obvious faux pas, it stays in. So
Uh,
like what I just said, Siren, it stays in.
awesome.
So
So I started Disabled Hikers in March of 2018. And again, it kind of came on the heels of that lifetime of feeling excluded from the outdoors and from society in general, and not having access to kind of information that I needed. So when I went out for that hike and was once again just experiencing all these obstacles and barriers that I wasn't prepared for, and having this really uncomfortable and unsafe experience, that really kind of just, again, it was that light bulb moment. I said, enough, I'm going to do something about this. So and I went, put up the blog on the website, and it really kind of took off from there. We started getting media press within 2 weeks, really. And then I launched the social media, and it took off from there, and just really started connecting with so many disabled folks who didn't feel like they were being represented in the outdoor space at all. And we're really just craving this information in the community. So that really has kind of become the bedrock of disabled hikers, and figuring out how to provide that authentic representation, how to bring the diversity of disabled folks together and share this information and these resources, developing a real process for creating these trail guides and providing the information that disabled folks need, and really trying to format a best practice around that so that other people can go out and be able to write some of these trail guides and provide that information too.
okay. What are the range of offerings that are available on the website?
Mhm. Yeah, so we have, of course, we have the trail guides. I think there's probably close to 30 on there right now, plus links to outside other projects we've worked on with other organizations to create trail guides like Save the Redwoods and Visit Idaho, for example. There's also courses on there about accessibility in the outdoors and some articles about like accessible trail surfaces and how to create accessible social media and things like that. We also post all of our event listings on there. We regularly hold group hikes. So all that information is available on there as well. And we're actually in the process. We'll have a brand new website launched after the first of the year that will be much cleaner, better organized. We're having a glow up from our old WordPress blog. So
Okay. Okay. And as the founder of Disabled Hikers, it would be nice to say a lot of the coaches that are in my sphere, they talk about, yes, my team this, my team that. The reality is, okay, I do have a very small team. I have my business partner on our podcasting venture. We have couple VAs and IT folks. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to me. If I don't podcast, they don't even make a difference. Okay.
Mhm.
So does Syren Nagakyrie have a team, or is everything right now on your shoulders?
It has until very recently been entirely me. I
Okay.
recently hired a part-time assistant who has been fabulous. I'm so grateful for them.
Okay.
And I do have a small board of 4 people. Yeah, but yeah, it has historically been me. And yeah, of course, we're hoping to grow.
Okay. Okay. Now you do have a kind of a fund me page. So if folks want to, in addition, we're going to share this later and learn more about disabled hikers. We'll give the URL to the website, but there is an active Go Fund Me kind of activity going on.
Right. Yeah. We are by one nonprofit, so our donations are tax deductible.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So let's talk about this book that you authored, this outdoor guide, and I have to also share Falcon Books is really, from my perspective, maybe you have a different perspective, but they write some pretty phenomenal guides, very detailed, and their work with the author to create these guides is very impressive. There was one of my other guests, I met her via the Outdoor Writers Association of America, is up on the western slope of the Rockies, and she wrote a hiking guide around Denver, which I thought was pretty cool. But in any case, I digress. So, talk to us more about the Disabled Hiker's Guide to Western Washington and Oregon. When did that begin to take shape for you?
Yeah, so it happened in, I guess, January of 2020. Had was featured in an article in Outside Online magazine and had mentioned at the end of that that I'd love to write a book one day. And someone at Falcon read that article and reached out and said, "We'd love to work with you on that." And I said, "Cool." I said, "Someday." I didn't mean like right now, but okay, let's do it. So, yeah, of course, that was, like I said, January 2020. So, 3 months later, the world changed.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, but yeah, it really is truly a groundbreaking book. It is the first book that has been written by a disabled person for the entire disability community and really goes into great detail about the trails and what you'll encounter. And what includes things like scenic drives, which are often left out of hiking guidebooks because that's not really being outdoors. But, for me as a disabled and chronically ill person, going for a scenic drive is like one of my favorite things.
Right.
So there's that. And then there's a variety of wheelchair accessible and wheelchair hikeable trails, and then foot trails for folks who are ambulatory but may have mobility or non-mobility disabilities. Lots of information for folks who are blind. Yeah, it just goes into really great detail.
Okay. Now, for our listeners, these books by Falcon, and of course, we're going to have a link back to Disabled Hiker's Guide to Western Washington and Oregon. These books are very detailed. The maps are very detailed. And I know this from Katie Ketchum. That's the young lady that I interviewed. Uh, how did you go about creating these, not only talking about the activity, whatever it was, the trail, the drive, etc., How did you go about getting the detail to create the maps? Because that's no small feat as well.
hmm Yeah. So as I'm out hiking, of course, I'm recording a GPS track on my phone through a GPS app. And then you have to download that and then re-upload it to an online map topography program and create the map and download that and then mark it with all the points that you need to know and all of that. So it's a very intensive process for sure.
Okay. Did you, when you were in the middle of this process, did you happen to say, "What was I thinking?"
Yes. Many, many, many times.
Yeah. Okay. How
Yeah.
did it feel once the book was finally published? And it's available on paperback and on Kindle. But what did it feel like when you saw it, you saw the hard copy or you saw it up online? What did that feel like?
It was really amazing in a lot of ways. I don't have children, but it definitely felt like having my book baby in the world. Yeah. It was really exciting. And it being my first book ever and having it be something like this is really a moment of pride for me for sure. And it actually it sold out in the first 2 weeks, so I
Yeah.
wasn't even able to, like, really do a full release party because there was no copies available. So that was an exciting problem to have.
Yeah, that's a very good problem to have. I birthed the book as well, and trust me, I didn't have the problem you were having. So congratulations. And what has been the reaction to the book?
It has been really incredible. I hear from so many disabled folks who see the book and they're just, like, literally moved to tears, just seeing not only themselves represented, but knowing that they have access to the information that typically they would, again, have to spend hours and hours researching to try to find. So knowing that they can just pick up this book and find a trail that they can immediately go do just like anyone else has been a really meaningful experience.
Okay. Now, your book focuses on we have a big country, but at the end of the day, it focuses on a very small geographic area.
Mhm.
And the coach in me, the business coach, says there's lots of opportunities here.
Yeah.
And I could envision an entire series across the US. Now, I'm not saying you have to go do it because you wrote a book on an area you're very familiar with, but could you see self, could you see yourself taking this idea and perhaps growing it with others who are as passionate about accessibility and the outdoors?
Absolutely. Yeah. I am working on the Northern California guidebook now. So that'll be out in 2024. And I'm hoping to continue doing more. But like you said, it's a big country and I'm only one person. And each book takes a lot of time. So
Yes.
yeah, so my plan is to develop a leadership development training program to train other disabled folks on how to do these trail assessments and write these trail guides in a really meaningful way. And making sure that we stay aligned with, for example, providing really good land acknowledgements and providing really good trail information, knowing what to look for folks who have a disability that's different than yours and figuring out how to do it again in an accessible way so that other different folks can do it as well.
Okay. What have you learned about yourself now that you've built the website, you have the 501(c)(3) disabled hikers, now the book. What have you learned about yourself?
And that I can work way too much. Yeah, that's a big one for sure. But definitely the outdoors is really it's a community for me, and I don't necessarily mean human community. I mean the trees and the plants and the land is my home, and just always having access to that sense of belonging really just keeps me motivated to keep going. So
Okay. Is there one particular trail that maybe it's your secret happy place? I don't know. I mean, I have my happy place, but do you have a trail or an adventure or an experience that you have been on and it's like, "Oh my god, this is fantastic. I'm so glad I'm here."
yeah, I mean, there's definitely places that I go back to regularly that really help Yeah, help sustain me. And I think one of those is Rialto Beach here on Western Olympic Peninsula. It's just one of the most special places I've ever been to. And it's just a really wild and spectacular place that I really love. So, yeah.
Okay. And as far as now, visiting the website, I noticed at the time you had a little friend with you. Who's your friend?
Yeah. So, well, when I first started Disabled Hikers, I had one little friend named Ranger, and he passed a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic, actually. But then now I have a new friend his name is Benji. He's a little golden long haired Cairn Terrier mix, and he is the unlikeliest of trail dogs, but I think he gets more upset when we're not out hiking than I do.
Okay. Okay. Now, does he have to have a little coat, a sweater that he gets to wear, booties, or how does he prepare to go out on a hike?
He's happy just in his harness with his leash and his little treat bag. And yeah, he has a really thick coat, so I don't have to put too many clothes on him, thankfully.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Where do you see your adventures coming up next? I mean, you're going to work on the book. You got some other work you're going to do in Northern California, but are there some other adventures that you see yourself wanting to go on to further stretch your edge about what you've been doing and experiencing?
Mhm. Yeah, my big kind of focus coming up next is figuring out how to um basically I want to be able to get a camper van or some kind of travel vehicle that will make it easier to travel all across the country and connect with disabled folks everywhere and do some of these training programs and do more in-person work and to really help plant these more of these seeds all across the country and connect with other folks who are already doing some of this work too.
Okay. Okay. I guess I've been mentioned in the Outdoor Writers Association of America. Are you familiar with the organization?
Slightly, not too much.
Okay, so I would encourage you to be more than slightly familiar with them because another one of our episodes was with Robert Annis, who has one of those vans that you want to go out in.
Mhm.
Now he's not doesn't have a disability. Well, he may say he has a disability, but he doesn't. But I mean, that's such a phenomenal opportunity to go out, explore, do the work on your writing, and just be in the moment. Frankly, I'd like to do my podcasting and my coaching from a camper van
Mm.
anywhere in the world. So now you've given me hope. So thank you for that. Speaking of hope, you've in your 40 some years, you've covered a lot of ground. Challenges growing up, things have changed. You have new experiences, and now you've had this nonprofit. You're an accomplished author, blogger. Do you have hope?
Oh, I mean, hope is hard to come by these days for sure.
Yeah.
Even with all of the good work that I know I'm doing and other folks are doing, it can be hard to come by. Yeah. And I still have a lot of personal challenges in my life that I'm trying to work through, as
Okay.
so many of us do. But I'm excited, I would say, about the possibilities of what lies ahead. And there's so much that feels like it is going wrong. That means there's so much room for change and to make
Mhm.
things better. So I try to hold on to that.
Okay. Okay. Before we head out, we have a couple topics that we routinely include in our episodes or try to. And one of those is the aha moment. And this is an opportunity for you to really stop for a minute, think back, like, oh, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this, or this is so wonderful, or I'm in the right place at the right time. What would be your aha moment today as we close out the 2022?
Yeah, I think one of the experiences that I often think back on kind of happened fairly early in Disabled Hikers as one of our first group hikes that I led. And of course, I spend tons of time organizing these group hikes and making sure we have all of the information and all of that available for folks. But working with disability community, there's oftentimes you don't feel up to doing it at the last minute, and that's totally understood. So, but I went out to do this group hike, and one person showed up And of course, I was feeling a little disappointed about that. But we started out on this hike and it was their first time not only being at this park, but their first time really going out for a hike at all in years. And they weren't really able to hike very far. We did maybe a quarter mile, less than half a mile on this trail, and just spent a lot of time hanging out and talking and nerding out about plants and just having a really meaningful moment of connection. And at the end of it, they told me that it was one of the most meaningful things that they'd been able to do in a long time. And I followed up with them afterwards and found out that after that, their illness had really increased. And it was kind of the last time that they'd been able to go out since then. So, and that moment was really helping sustain them through their struggles as well. So I think back about that a lot, that we can never know, even if we're only touching one person, we can't know what that impact is going to be. So, yeah.
I love that. And it's not lost on me as you just shared that story, and even as you shared your journey, is it's important for us. Maybe it's our internal strength and perseverance and wanting to discover and have goals that we can achieve to get out there and explore. Also, that you and this individual did not, in that moment, let the disability stop them from making that discovery and walking down that trail or any other trail. And I love that. And it's so important, and we have to continue it. Even people like me who sit at his desk every week and perhaps even on the weekends doing work. And here in Las Vegas, I don't care about the strip, but there's hiking all around us,
Mhm.
especially this time of the year. So I love that. The other segment we have on our show is called the Insight to Go. And you've shared a lot of insights along the way, but is there a quote, a book, a suggestion, piece of feedback, something you'd like to leave our listeners with as we seek to inform them about the outdoors, disability, and just not letting the circumstance, whatever it might be, to stop us?
Yeah, I think for me, recognizing that disability is entirely natural, that when I am in the outdoors, I experience disability in the landscape. I can see the ways that disability exists in different bodies and forms, even among plants and animals, seeing the ways that bodies adapt to the natural environment, especially with climate change and all of that. And just seeing disability in the landscape for me is so incredibly meaningful. And I think as more people can start to notice that, and that will really help, I think, shift not only our perspectives about disability, but our perspectives about nature and climate on the whole.
Good. Thank you for sharing that. Now, before we head out, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where are the best places for them to go?
So we have a website at disabledhikers.com, and we're also on Instagram and Facebook, and a Facebook group at Disabled Hikers also.
Okay. And we'll provide the backlinks, of course, to the website, disabledhikers.com, and to the Instagram and Facebook pages. And we'll also have a link back to the PayPal funding link. And folks, definitely, you got to check out the Syren's book and just the website. Just lots of great information. And Syren, I really appreciate you taking time out of which I know is your busy day. And it's the end of the how this is, I believe this is, I think, going to be our second to last episode of 2022. I think you might end up being our first episode of 2023 that we publish. So really appreciate you helping us end this year on such a high note. Wonderful episode. Great to get to know you and learn more about you and your work. So thank you for taking the time to visit with us today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right. Listen, stay in the line. We're going to do a quick close and you and I can have a final chat. Okay.
Great. Mhm.
All right. Okay, folks, we have just been chatting with Syren Nagakyrie. She is an outdoor enthusiast, author, blogger, and founder of Disabled Hikers. And she is the author of the Disabled Hikers Guide to Western Washington in Oregon. It's available by Falcon Books. and it's on all the book purchasing platforms. I'm excited to get a copy. I want to get up to the Pacific Northwest and maybe go hiking with Syren someday. And Syren, by the way, as you're listening to us do this close, you need to meet Isabel Edwards, or Izzy Edwards. She's probably, I don't know, 18, 19, phenomenal photographer. And I'm thinking, just on these hikes you're going on, what ways to also capture in the moment the wildlife, the animals. So I've got to introduce you to Izzy. Now, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I mean, really, there's no reason we shouldn't be out there exploring, being in nature. And it's so important here today in 2022 and all that we've gone through in the past couple of years with COVID and then some. And we have the ability to get out there and explore, and we should not be letting our circumstance get in the way. There's ways to find ways to get out there, and don't let your circumstance, whether you live in the urban environment, whether there's a disability, find a way to get out there and explore and enjoy nature. Now, if you enjoyed today's podcast, you'll find us on all of the podcasting platforms. Please like, share, and comment. You can also find us on the outdooradventureseries.com. And we are also on LinkedIn and Facebook, which is our Outdoor Adventure Series pages. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day. Take care of yourselves, your family, and we will see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.